I'm Danielle Soto.
And I'm Jordan Reimer.
And this is Drunk, His, and Herstory. The story of Sarah Basson
and me, Jordan Reimer. Sarah Basson and I met in September 2005, my first day of college in Princeton, and it was pre-move-in day. It was just the Orthodox kids coming in to town on Friday night to Shabbat services. And then I remember seeing the other freshmen, and I was like, I can't believe that these are going to be the students that are going to be my peers for the next 4 years. I better get close with the staff. And so Sarah and I became friends. We ended up hanging out a lot. I remember a lot of conversations over meals, debates about Reform Judaism, Orthodox Judaism, debates about politics. These were like the Bushy Rock years. And I remember learning a lot about Reform Judaism. Sarah introduced me to The Daily Show, which I'm very grateful for. Over the course of these 2 years, my freshman and sophomore year in college, we became very close. We went on alternative spring breaks together. First one to Morgantown, West Virginia. The next one to Mississippi. I remember on our Mississippi trip, and I was hanging out with this one girl a lot, and at one point Sarah was like, "Are you hanging out with her because that's the closest you could get to me?" And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm just hanging out. But I had like this inkling that I kind of liked her, even at that time. We went to a Darfur rally in DC, and I like the fact that she even brought me and got me to go to a Darfur rally in DC was like kind of crazy, because again, like social justice was not my thing. But I remember like sitting on the bus next to her, and like either her leaning on my shoulder or my leaning on her shoulder, and like really thinking something special about Sarah. And then the real inkling, but of course I was in denial that I liked her, was she was leaving after 2 years of Princeton. I got her 3 gifts. The first gift I got her was a framed photo of the two of us, that the first photo we ever took, again, alternative spring break. The next gift that I got her was this book of a conversation between an Orthodox rabbi and a Reform rabbi talking about the differences in their religion. And then the third gift I got her was this t-shirt that said, "Real men marry rabbis." And when I wrote her like this personal inscription that said like, "Sarah, thank you so much for teaching me so much about Reform Judaism. We really learned from one another. Let's keep the conversation going." And then I remember I signed it, "Love, Jordan." And for me, that was like a really big indication that, you know, my feelings transcended. But of course I was in denial. So in our last social justice movie night, this is after 2 years of college, we went to see United 93, which some argue is not in fact a social justice movie, but I argue that of course it is, because it's about 9/11, and what more justice issue can you get than 9/11? We went to see United 93, and after the movie we went out for a drink, and we're just talking about stuff, and Sarah was like, "I like you, Jordan Reimer." And I immediately responded, "I like you too, Sarah Basson." And then she like took a breath and was like, "So my like of you is more than just a friend." And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like stunned, and I had to think, and I was like, okay, I need like a few days to think about this. And I remember listening to Blink-182 to like gather my thoughts. Very, very reflective, introspective band. And I like wrote down my thoughts. I knew what I was gonna say, and this was during finals. This was like at the end of my second year, during finals season. Crazy time. We ended up driving over to this bridge area in Princeton, and I can't get the words out of my mouth when I'm like trying to say what I want to say. So I'm like, okay. No, okay. Okay, here it goes. Okay. And I remember saying, even though this can only last for a short time because you're going off to rabbinical school, plus you're a Reform rabbi, you're going to be a Reform rabbi, I'm an Orthodox Jew, like this can't last. I just want to be able to hold you. And so let's do this. Let's make it work. And that was actually 12 years ago tonight, May 10th, 2006. So we end up dating for 6 weeks. After 4 weeks of dating, we say I love you to each other, which is crazy. I've never done that before. Certainly never said that to anybody before. I haven't done that in such a short time to anybody since. But, you know, we had known each other for 2 years, so we were really close friends. And then after 6 weeks, right before we were about to break up, she was going to go to Israel to rabbinical school. I was, again, an Orthodox Jew. We go to Kansas City. We drive from New Jersey to Kansas City on this epic road trip. It was awesome. But then we broke up. We were no longer dating, and yet we still were in touch. I went to Arabic camp. She was in rabbinical school, and every week in Arabic camp, I would get a letter in Arabic from Sarah that was like DIY, do-it-yourself, arts and crafts, amazingly done. So again, I got all these letters, and I remember thinking at the time, like, this can't be the end of our relationship. This can't be the end. So I actually decided to go to Israel to visit her during my winter break in my junior year. And we like finally have it out to talk about like the issues between us, and we realized like it can't work. But the next day, I remember thinking like, this can't be the end. I don't have closure. I ended up calling her roommate and was like, hey, you know, Sarah and I talked last night, but, you know, I don't really feel closure. Do you think it's a good idea for me to call her? And she's like, yeah, you can call her if you want to break her heart again. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, my heart is broken. Like, I'm torn up inside. I want to talk to Sarah. Like, I don't want this to be over. So we end up, like a week later, she gives me a call in Israel. It's like my last 2 days in Israel. And she's like, hey, we should talk. And so we end up having like a really nice closure. We reconcile, but you know, we realize like this is the end, and we don't talk again for 6.5 years. Email sporadically, but it's nothing substantial. At some point in 2013, I get an email that says, "Hey Jordan, I'm going to be in New York for a conference. Do you want to grab a drink?" And I say, "Sure." Like, all right, Sarah, let's grab a drink. Again, 6.5 years of us not really being in communication. I say, okay, let's meet up for a drink. And so we meet up, and within 5 minutes of us talking, I realized, like, wow, like not a moment has passed. The connection between us is still incredibly strong. I have never fallen out of love with this woman. And within 5 minutes, in my head, I was like, I am never leaving you tonight. So even though we only arranged to meet up for an hour, I was like, I'm not leaving you. So she had dinner plans after an hour. I followed her to dinner. After dinner, I was like, hey, can I walk you back to your apartment where you're staying? And then her roommate had a dog, so we ended up walking her dog. We dropped the dog off in my apartment. Then we ended up having this nice conversation in Riverside Park on the Upper West Side. We ended up picking up the dog, and the dog completely trashed my apartment, knocked over every single garbage can in the apartment, which was frustrating, but it was totally worth it because I got to spend time with Sarah. What was supposed to be a 1 hour drink turned into an 8-hour date from like 5 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning. And then the next day, I like did a little Google sleuthing, me being the intelligence analyst that I am, figured out where she was staying in this conference in upstate New York, sent her flowers to the conference hall saying, here's to a memorable night. And then 2 days later, I get a call from Sarah saying, this can work. And I remember saying, like, no, it can't. I was like, we're long distance, first of all, and I had a really toxic relationship that was long distance. And then also, you're a Reform rabbi and I'm an Orthodox Jew, like, this can't work. And so began the 14-month lobbying campaign that Sarah launched or like 3-year lobbying campaign that Sarah launched to get me to make this relationship work. Every now and again, I'd get like a random handwritten letter saying, hey Jordan, I still love you, let's make this work. We would see each other. I like flew out to Los Angeles one time for a week to spend time with her. She came to New York again for another conference because she's kind of a big deal. But we went to Charleston, South Carolina, and pretty much ever since then, I couldn't get her out of my mind. I even dated a few people, but I just couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. And then like 6 months later, this article came out in the Forward that talked about intramarriage in the Jewish community, about Reform Jews or non-religious Jews and Orthodox Jews marrying and getting together and making it work. And so Sarah emails me this article and is like, see, I told you it can work. And I emailed her back and I was like, one step ahead of you. I had already emailed the author of the article telling him my entire story, pouring my heart out to this guy, asking to be connected to these couples that he was talking about. And I forwarded that email to Sarah and I was like, I'm one step ahead of you. This can work. You're right. Let's talk about it. And so we end up coming up with this infamous Google Doc, the Google Doc, where we end up finally talking about all the issues that divide us and writing them down in this Google Doc and then having these series of conversations about kosher and Shabbos and Taharat HaMishpacha and what are you going to do about X and what am I going to do about Y. And we like talk about it for hours and hours on end. And I told her like, okay, this can work, but it can't work long distance. I'm gonna move out to Los Angeles if this ever has a shot. And so I told my NYPD employers that I'm moving to LA, and they actually created a job for me in LA to make it work. I had this new made-up job in LA, and it totally worked. And so from us dating for 6 weeks 10 years ago or 12 years ago, we totally took it on faith that this relationship was going to work, and we were exactly vindicated. It was amazing. Within a month that I moved to LA and found my own place, like it was just this amazing relationship. And so after about 10 months of us living in LA, I was like, it's time to propose. And so we ended up going to New York to meet my extended family, and then we were going to Kansas City to meet her extended family. And I had this great notion. I was like, okay, in LA, I should recreate the date from 10 years ago from our trip to LA to propose. So I ended up finding all these photos of us that we took in all these different locations in LA, and I brought them with us to Kansas City, and I was like, save me a day. I'm not gonna tell you what we're gonna do, but we're gonna do it. So just save me a day. So she saves me a day, and I end up recreating all these different locations that we went to 12 years ago. I have to figure out where some of these random locations are, again through Google, Intel, and we end up taking photos of all these different places with the photos from 10 years ago. And throughout the day, I'm giving her these gifts, which were the same gifts that I gave her 12 years ago, where right before she was leaving Princeton. So the first gift I gave her was this framed photo of the two of us. The second photo I gave her was the original book with the original inscription of the Reform rabbi and the Orthodox rabbi talking about the issues that divide them and unite them. I had gotten that book back and I gave it to her. And then at the last stop of the night, we were at the same bar that we went to 10 years ago. I had tried to find a band to play outside just 12 years ago, but that didn't work. I wanted to play a mix of all of our songs, but they told us that we couldn't play anything over the speakers. But on the jukebox, I found a Deanna Carter song, which was our song. We danced anyway from that night 12 years ago. And then there was this sorority reunion of 20-year reunion, all these drunk women in their 40s who bought all these songs on the jukebox and prevented me from buying this one freaking song that I wanted to play. And I was like, do you mind if I just buy this one song? I want to propose to my girlfriend. And they were like, fine, okay, play the song, buy the song. So I bought the song, and we ended up dancing and taking a photo of us dancing. And then afterwards, I took out the third gift, which was Real Men Marry Rabbis, and I proposed to her with that t-shirt. And she said yes, which was amazing. And now we are getting married, and it's incredibly exciting. And I'm excited to be a Rebitzer, which is the official male version of the term Rebbitzin. I will be the spouse of a Reform rabbi, and we are gonna make it work because we have a Google Doc and we love each other, and it's very exciting. And so I'm looking forward to spending a lifetime together. That's the story. That's the story of me and Sarah.